if you even do the whole raga changes. Melodically, it's a totally different raga because the sequence change can change it into a different shade of a mood. The mood in the mode is a very important part of music in melodic systems. So how do you change moods? How can you bring a different shade of mood? Now in a Western classical composition, you will never see this distinction because if it's a major scale composition, typically you will have any kind of sequence that is permitted in that. Exactly. So then you have all kinds of possibilities where you have more stress on the chords that can work within that. Now if you were to just demonstrate the major scale, some of the chords that now if you were to think of this as a raga, the major scale is called, say, Shankarabaranam in Indian classical Carnatic music, or it's called Bilaval in the North Indian tradition. If you were to think of that, all these chords that he played now may not work in that raga if you were to hear the music with the scale in mind. So this is where Melharmony comes into play. Melharmony actually chooses the possible chords or the possible combinations of notes that can be played, but what can still work with the melodic notes. In other words, Melharmony is harmony with an emphasis on the melodic rules of each system of music. It's not necessarily applicable only to Indian classical music. It can be applied to any melodic system that is well defined.
This is not an Eastern or a Western idea. This is a musical idea.
Two things here. One is the chord structures that you can have within any kind of scale sequence, which is the raga. I'm just keeping a very simple term for the raga. Raga is much more than just a scale and sequence. It has ornamentation, it has an hierarchy of notes which are important within that, and it has certain other characteristic key phrases which actually go on to give it an identity and so forth. So in that kind of a context, what we do in terms of the chord progressions that are possible, Mr. Steve Kerr will also explore with you some of the counterpoint which you can actually come up with.
There are 5 ways we can take a melody and add a duet part to it. Triadic harmony, fragmentation, rhythmic interest, contrary motion, and imitation.
Melody is like universal because anybody deals with successive notes, whether it's Polynesia or China or Brazil, USA or India. You have all these melodic possibilities because it's very natural phenomenon. When it comes to harmony, that's where a little bit of science comes into play, like what chords can work. Even there, I think the chords that were palatable at one time, now we have so many other different chords, the whole sense of aesthetics keeps changing. Raga concept. As I was saying, it is not only the scale but the sequence. We just showed a very small example of da, 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 and da, 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 da. But you can have very complex sequential possibilities. And then the rule of Melharmony will become like how to harmonize them, still not prejudicing the sequence of it. Now for example, da, 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 there's a raga like this. Each time the ascending sequence will be that, but the descent in that strategy. Yeah. So we cannot just have most of the chords that can work in a major scale in this kind of a sequence. So that's where the beauty and fun of Melharmony is. The scope of Melharmony is how do we pick chords that can still bring out the flavor of that particular raga, and how we can just have fidelity to the sequence. So if we compose a piece in this raga, throughout the piece we should only use chords that can actually make that sequence come alive.